All right, today we're going to do paper 1, which is a multiple choice core option for the Coordinated Sciences, and that's CIE IGCSE. Okay, this is from May-June 2018, and this is code 0654/11. Okay, so my name is Alicia, and I will be doing the biology and chemistry parts, and later on, Mike will take over for the physics. He's the physics and maths guy. Okay, so let's begin. Question 1. Which rows correctly match characteristics of living things with their descriptions? Okay, so for this question, you don't need to know the characteristics because you're given them. You just need to know whether the definition that they're giving you is the actual definition. Okay, so characteristic 1, excretion. Is excretion removing the waste products of metabolism? Yes. Good. Characteristic 2. Is growth making more living things of the same type? No, that's reproduction. Okay, and characteristic 3, nutrition. Is that taking in or producing food? Yes. And respiration. Is that releasing energy from food? Yes. So the characteristics which match are 1, 3, and 4, and the answer there is B. All right. Question 2. Which statement about cells is correct? So when we talk about cells, remember there's cell walls and cell membranes. And remember, if you've ever done the onion experiment, where you put an onion cell into salt water or sugar water, you'll notice that over time you get plasmolysis. You get a little shape like that. You have your nucleus there, and this is a cell membrane coming away from the cell wall. So that's in a plant. So plant cells have cell membranes. Okay. So cell membranes are only found in animal cells. No, because cell membranes are also in plant cells. Cell membranes are only found in plant cells. Well, no, because we need cell membranes. That's what holds all the goo inside our cells. Cell walls are only found in animal cells. Absolutely not. We do not have any cell walls because cell walls are needed to be able to hold up plants with just basically water. They don't have a skeleton. We have a skeleton. Cell walls are found only in plants? Yes. So the answer here is D. Okay. Question 3. Tests were carried out on a colorless liquid with the following results. Okay, so we have Benedict's test, Biuret test, and iodine test. Benedict's tests for reducing sugar. Biuret tests for proteins, and iodine tests for starch. Okay, Benedict starts off blue, Biuret starts off blue, and iodine starts off yellow. So basically, if they've changed color, then there's something in there to make it change color. So if Benedict's ends off blue, then that's negative. There's no reducing sugar in the solution. If Biuret, which starts blue, ends up purple, has to be something in it. That's positive. Okay, so it's positive for proteins. Okay, and iodine, blue, black, it's not yellow, which it starts off to be, so that's also positive. Okay, so this solution has proteins and starch. It does not have reducing sugar. So in here, let's see, protein only, no. Protein and reducing sugar, doesn't have reducing sugar. Protein and starch, yes. That is the answer. Protein, reducing sugar, and starch, no reducing sugar. Okay, fantastic. Question 4. The graph shows the volume of air breathed in and out over a period of time. Okay, so this is somebody doing their normal breathing. Something happens at time X, and the breathing changes. Okay, so at this point, what happens? The time between each breath is shorter after time X, and then here, and that's time. And over here, if we look at the volume of air breathed in before, that's smaller than the volume of air breathed in afterwards. Okay, so if we look at this, so the breathing rate, you're talking about per time. Okay, so this is, does the breathing rate decrease? No, it increases because it goes more faster. Okay, so it increases this one or this one. Breathing volume, the breathing volume has increased as well. So that is the answer, D. Fantastic. Question 5. The word equation for aerobic respiration is shown. Aerobic means it needs oxygen, so that's given to you. Okay, it's oxygen plus some mystery substance produces carbon dioxide plus water. Okay, what do we need? We need glucose. Okay, glucose is the answer. Now glycogen, it's not glycogen because that's the storage form. It's a storage form of glucose in animals. And starch is a storage form of glucose in plants. And sucrose is a disaccharide. It's basically plants transporting sugars. It's plants transporting glucose. All right. Question 6. By which process does oxygen pass from the alveoli to the blood capillaries in the lungs? Is it A, diffusion, B, evaporation, C, secretion, or D, transpiration? Well, let's look at this. It's not transpiration because that's how plants lose their water from the leaves. It's not secretion. Things like glands secrete their hormones into the bloodstream, but that's not the alveoli passing oxygen into the blood. Okay, sweat glands also secrete sweat. Okay, evaporation. No, we don't want to have a surface open to the air quite like that. It's not quite how it works in the lungs. Okay, it's diffusion. A. So we have our little alveoli or air sacs, and we have our capillaries going really close, and we have our blood cells taking up pretty much the entire capillary, and they should all be the same size and they should be biconcave, but that's not the point here. The point is we have lots of oxygen when you breathe in, and quite a bit of CO2 in here. The CO2 goes that way so that it goes from high concentration to low concentration, and the oxygen goes that way because, again, goes from high concentration to low concentration. Okay, that is diffusion. Fantastic. Question 7. The diagram shows a section through the skin of a person who is sweating. I just talked about sweat glands, and this is a sweat gland secreting some sweat onto the surface of the skin. We have our capillary, which goes really close to the surface of the skin, which is fed by the arterioles, and the blood goes in and then goes out. Okay, so what happens to the arteriole, and what will be the effect on heat loss when a person is sweating? Okay, so when you're sweating, first thing you have to think about, do you want to lose heat or do you want to gain heat? Well, you sweat because you're hot and you want to lose heat. So heat loss, you want to increase the amount of heat loss. So the answer there is one of those two. Now, do you increase the amount of heat loss by having wide blood vessels, or do you increase the heat loss by having really narrow blood vessels? Well, the blood contains a lot of heat, and in order to get rid of that heat, you want the blood vessels to be nice and wide. You want to get as much blood to the surface. This is an exaggeration. It's not quite that wide. As much blood to the surface with all your red blood cells, specifically the heat, so it can radiate off your skin. And that's why when you're sweating, you generally have red cheeks as well, because you have lots of blood vessels right underneath your skin. Okay, opening up. Now, so wide, is that constricting or dilating? Well, that is dilating. Constricting means making smaller. So the answer is D. Question 8. Which statement about reproduction is correct? Okay, if we look at this, we're talking about diploid and haploid and gametes and zygotes and genetically identical. Okay, so let's look at this. In sexual reproduction, because these all seem to be talking about sexual reproduction, sexual, not asexual. We have an egg plus a sperm. And so an egg is a haploid gamete plus a haploid gamete. And what does that produce? When you have an egg and a sperm, you get a fertilized egg, which is known as a zygote. And that is haploid plus haploid produces diploid, and 2 gametes, that's a zygote. Okay. All right. Now, are these going to be genetically identical? Is a zygote going to be genetically identical to this and this? No, both of those are different, so you can't have it identical to both of them. Okay, so we know that this one definitely is not correct. Okay, so let's look at these. Diploid gametes are produced in sexual reproduction. That's a diploid zygote is produced. It's not that one. Diploid zygotes are produced in sexual reproduction. Well, yes. Okay, and haploid zygotes are produced in sexual reproduction? No, we need 2 sets of DNA, 2 sets of chromosomes, so it's not that one. Okay, fantastic. Next question. Question 9. Which statement about flowers is correct? Okay, we're talking about anthers and stigmas and carpels and stamens and ovaries. Okay, so let's quickly do a quick diagram of the flower. Very quick. This is only a multiple choice exam. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so okay, this is a terrible diagram of a flower, but it shows the parts basically. Okay, we have, that's the female structure, and we have 2 sets of the male structure. Okay, that the female structure is known as the carpel. Okay, and the male structure is known as the stamen. Okay, so now on the stamen we have the anther, and holding it up is a filament. On the female structure we have the sticky stigma. We have stigmas have style, the style holding it up, and we have the ovary with the ovules inside. Okay, so if we look at this, the anther, which is here, and the stigma, which is here, are parts of the carpel. No. Anthers on the male, stigmas on the female. Again, anthers on the male, stigmas on the female, so they're not going to be parts of the stamen either. The ovary here and the stigma here are parts of the carpel. That is correct. And the ovary and stigma are parts of the stamen. No, that's the male structure, is the stamen. Okay, there we go. That's the answer. Next. Question 10. The diagram shows the female reproductive system. In which labeled part is the egg fertilized? All right, so first of all, we have the ovary here, and this is where the egg is produced and stored. If it's made it up to the cervix here, then it's gone too far and it cannot be fertilized. Okay, this section here, that is the uterus, and that is where implantation takes place. So it has to be fertilized before it gets to the uterus. Okay, so that means the answer is B, in the oviduct. All right. Question 11. Which statement describes why humans use artificial selection in the breeding of animals? Okay, so that's artificial selection, and that's in animals. It also happens in plants. Now this is artificial selection. It's not genetic engineering. Genetic engineering when you put one gene from one organism into another organism. Artificial selection is just where you take 2 animals, in this case, that have characteristics you like and let them breed. Maybe you want a pug with a very short nose. You get 2 short-nosed dogs and you let them breed, and you get a shorter nosed dog. Or you want a bright shiny goldfish with lots of silver flecks in the scales. Very pretty. Then you let the prettiest goldfish you have breed and see what the prettiest offspring look like and let those breed. Okay, so let's see. Is it A, the animals are better suited to their environment? Absolutely not. A bright shiny goldfish is going to be the first eaten by the heron that comes to the pond. Not well suited to their environment. So the animals are genetically identical to each other. Absolutely not. Not through sexual reproduction, and we're talking about animals here. The animals contain genes from another species. No, that's genetic engineering. It's not that answer either. So the animals have increased economic importance? Yes. The brightest, shiniest goldfish will sell for the most money. Question 12. The diagram shows a simplified carbon cycle. Which labeled arrow represents respiration? Okay, let's look at this. So we have fossil fuels produce carbon dioxide. How does that happen? Well, that happens through burning or combustion. Okay, we have animals. The carbon goes from green plants into animals. Well, that generally happens because the animals eat the plants. So that's nutrition. Okay, carbon dioxide goes into green plants. Well, that's through the process of photosynthesis. So green plants produce carbon dioxide through respiration. And this confuses students in many questions because everybody knows that plants do photosynthesis and animals do respiration. However, plants can also do respiration at night or when it's dark because they can't do photosynthesis. They still do respiration. It's just they don't produce as much energy. It's not as useful to them as photosynthesis is. So be careful of that in many questions. It comes up sometimes and it can trick people. Question 13. What are the likely consequences of large-scale clearing of forests? Well, clearing of forests is not a good thing on the large scale. Trees obviously have deep roots, and those deep roots can move water from pooling on the surface, and they are homes to lots and lots of animals, and the forests do lots of things. We all know that. So, does flooding increase or decrease? The chances of flooding increase or decrease if you clear large forests? The chances of flooding will increase. Okay, and will the number of species in the area increase or decrease? It decreases a lot of biodiversity when you take out a large forest, so that will decrease. The answer is C. Good. Question 14. Which statement about liquids is correct? Okay, we're talking about shape and volume, being fixed or not fixed. Okay, so liquids. You have a glass of water, maybe a liter of water, and you pour it into a different sized container, still a liter, 1 liter in both, and it fits. So obviously the shape is not the same, but it's still a liter, but the volume stays at 1 liter. Okay, so do they have a fixed shape and a fixed volume? No, they don't have a fixed shape. Do they have a fixed shape but not a fixed volume? No, they don't have a fixed shape. They have no fixed shape, but they do have a fixed volume? Yes. The answer has to be C. They have no fixed shape and no fixed volume. 1 liter will stay as 1 liter. No, the answer is C. Good. And now we've finished the biology section and we're moving on to the chemistry section. Okay, so question 15. Pure copper chloride can be obtained from a mixture of powdered copper and solid copper chloride. Okay, so looking at this question, you have a big or a small little beaker, and somebody has put a bunch of powdered copper in with lots of little tiny crystals of copper chloride. They were pretty messy and they're cleaning up, and you just want the copper chloride. Okay? You might want the copper for something else, but you don't want them mixed together. You can't just pick out the little bits of copper chloride because there'll be little bits of copper attached to it. It just doesn't work. Okay, so how do we separate them? Well, first of all, looking at this, copper, powdered copper, insoluble. It does not dissolve in water. Copper chloride is soluble. So, first thing we have to do is we add water and stir. We dissolve the solid copper chloride in water. And then, because the powdered copper has not dissolved, we can filter out the copper. So we are left with the blue solution. We have our filter paper. I know it's beautiful again. Beautiful. We have our pure copper inside the filter paper, and we have a blue solution of copper chloride. And now it's not pure because there's water in it. So we need to remove the water by evaporating it, which crystallizes the copper chloride. So the answer to this is P, R, and then Q. Which one's that? That's B. Answer is B. Okay, good job. Question 16. An ion of sodium has a symbol Na plus with 23 and 11. Okay, so we have Na plus 23 and 11, just so you can see it better. Now this is the mass number, and that contains the protons plus the neutrons. That's the mass of the nucleus. This here is the proton number because it contains the protons. This means that it's an ion, so it has one more plus charge than it does negative, and protons are positive. So looking at this, so how many protons are there in this ion? It has 11, because that's what the proton number says. Now it has one more proton than it does electron. So that has to be 10. Okay, it has 10 electrons and 11 protons. There we go, the answer is A. Question 17. A rock contains 3 ores: galena, PbS, copper pyrites, CuFeS2, and cinnabar, HgS. How many metals are present in this rock? Well, that's the easiest way to do this is to look at the periodic table. Okay. So if you remember, there's a line here. Make it nice and big so you can see it better. This line here divides one part of the periodic table from the other. These are the metals, and these are the non-metals. So all we have to do is look at the ores that it asks for. So first of all, it says PbS. That's galena. Okay, so galena, we have Pb, that's lead. That's on the metal side. That's 1. And sulfur is on the non-metal side. No. Okay, second, it asks for copper pyrites. That is CuFeS2. Okay, so copper is here. It's on the metal side. That's 1. Fe, iron, is also on the metal side. It's another 1. And S2, again, it's still sulfur. It's still non-metal. So far we have 3. Okay, the final one that it asks for is cinnabar, which is HgS. Okay, Hg is mercury, right down here. That is a metal. S is still sulfur and still a non-metal, so that means the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 metals in that list of ores. So the answer is B. Good. Question 18. Molten lead-2 bromide is electrolyzed as shown. Okay, whenever you see electrolysis, before you even start looking at the rest of the question, you have permission to panic. Okay? Panic. We have positive anode, that's an A, and negative is cathode. positive anode, negative is cathode. That's the only time you're allowed to panic in a science exam. Okay. Now let's read the rest of the question. Okay. An element is produced at the negative electrode, also known as the cathode. Okay. So the negative electrode is known as the cathode. Well, that you can just tell from this panic saying. Okay. So what is the name of the element and of the negative electrode? Okay, so the element, we have molten lead 2 bromide. We have Pb and Br2. So we break that down. That is Pb2 plus, and that's Br minus. Okay, so the pluses go to the minus and the minus goes to the plus. Opposites attract. Okay, so that's lead. That'll be lead. We have the cathode. The answer is D. Good. Question 19. Dilute hydrochloric acid is added to lumps of calcium carbonate. Okay, so the hydrochloric acid going into calcium carbonate, that's an exothermic reaction. It's an exothermic reaction. Okay, so which change decreases the rate of reaction? Which change slows it down? So if we decrease the temperature of the acid, that will slow down the reaction because it's an exothermic reaction. But also, decreasing temperatures of reactions is generally going to reduce the rate of the reaction. Not always, though. If you increase the concentration of the acid, will that slow it down? No. If you have more stuff to react with, it will react faster. If you use a larger volume of the acid, so again, more stuff to react with, it will react faster. If we use powdered calcium carbonate, the key word there is powdered. That means increased surface area. Increased surface area means faster reactions, and that's pretty much with anything. So the answer here is A. Okay. Question 20. When iron is heated with steam, a black solid is formed. Okay. So we have the equation shown here. Iron plus water produces iron oxide plus hydrogen. Well, hydrogen is definitely not the black solid. So the black solid is iron oxide. So that's a solid. Hydrogen is a gas. Okay. Which statement about this reaction is correct? Iron has been oxidized because it has gained oxygen. Yes, it's gone from iron to iron oxide. That sounds like the correct answer. Okay. Iron oxide is being oxidized. It's added oxygen to the iron. Okay. Iron has been reduced because it removed oxygen from water. No, it removed oxygen from water, which means it causes reduction in the water. It's a reducing agent for the water, but iron itself has been oxidized. Okay, so it's not B. Iron oxide has been reduced because it contains oxygen. No, when you're talking about what is being reduced and what is being oxidized, you always talk about the reactants, the stuff on the left-hand side. Okay. So it's not that. Water has been oxidized because it contains oxygen. Now, water contains oxygen, but when you talk about oxidation and reduction, you're talking about what is happening during the reaction, not what it's already like. Okay, so the answer there is A. Good. Question 21. When aqueous sodium hydroxide is added to a solution of salt P, a white precipitate is produced. The white precipitate dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. When a solution containing aqueous barium ions is added to a solution of salt P under acidic conditions, a white precipitate is produced. What is P? Now, in order to answer this question, you need to know how to identify different ions. What are the tests? Okay, so this happens in a few stages. So first of all, we're talking about aqueous sodium hydroxide is added to a solution of salt P. We have our salt plus sodium hydroxide, okay? And it produces a white precipitate. Sometimes it's easier for these convoluted, complex questions to just write it out more simply. Then the white precipitate dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. Okay, it dissolves. So first of all, you put the salt in sodium hydroxide, a white precipitate is formed, then you put more sodium hydroxide in, and then the white precipitate disappears. Okay. When a solution containing aqueous barium ions is added to a solution of salt P under acidic conditions, so we have salt plus we have acidic conditions plus barium, 2 plus, barium ions. What happens? A white precipitate is produced. It produces another white precipitate. Okay, so what is P? What is the salt? Okay, so the first step is finding out whether we have the iron 2 or we have the zinc. When we get a precipitate of iron 2, it's either orange, brown, or it's green. Okay, now zinc gives a white precipitate, so it's most likely C or D. Okay, now we're looking to see whether it's a chloride or a sulfate. Okay, now chlorides are detected with silver nitrate. Okay, so it probably isn't that, because sulfates are detected with barium ions and acid in acidic conditions. Okay, so the answer is D. All right, but for that question, it's really important that you learn the different tests for the different ions. There's no shortcut way of answering that question. Question 22. Which statement about the elements in the periodic table is correct? Okay, group 1 elements become less reactive down the group. So if we look at the periodic table, okay, we have hydrogen at the top and of group 1, and we have francium at the bottom. Now in the class, you probably have done the squeaky pop test for hydrogen. You might have been able to see what lithium or sodium look like, maybe potassium. Now these ones, you're not going to have in the classroom. They're really, really dangerous because they get very reactive down the group. So group 1 elements become less reactive down the group? No. Okay, group 7 elements become less reactive down the group. Okay, we have fluorine and chlorine at the top of group 7. This is group 7. That's group 7. Okay, we have fluorine and chlorine at the top. And those are quite reactive. And then we get down iodine, acetine. Yeah, they become less reactive. It's generally is on one side. If they get more reactive, the other side becomes less reactive. They tend to have the opposite effect. Okay, so yes, they become less reactive as they go down the group. So acetine is very stable. That looks like it's the correct answer. Just to double check though, the elements are arranged in mass order. Well, no. Well, it tends to be in an approximate order of mass number. I mean, we have a couple doubles. We have both of these have a mass of 59. But over here we have 128 and then 127. So it's not arranged by mass number. It is, on the other hand, arranged by proton number. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's arranged by how many protons they are. They're not by the mass. So it's not arranged by mass order, and the elements become more metallic from left to right. Well, we've already looked at the periodic table. We've seen these are the metals, and these are the non-metals. So the answer is definitely not that. So it's not that. So the answer is B. Group 7 elements become less reactive down the group. Good. Question 23. Which property explains why aluminium is used to make food containers? A. It has a low density. Well, yes, it does, but that's not actually as useful to make food containers. It has a high strength. No, we wouldn't be able to make aluminum foil if it was very strong. It is resistant to corrosion. That's actually very important. It's not actually aluminum is resistant. Aluminum oxide is resistant to corrosion. But yes, it's resistant to corrosion. And it is very shiny. Well, that's probably a very unimportant characteristic of food containers. So what you want is you want it not to react with the food you put inside. You don't want it to corrode and create toxic chemicals that will go into your food. Okay. Question 24. 4 iron nails are placed in 4 test tubes as shown. In which test tube does the iron nail rust most quickly? Okay, so remember, for rust, you need water plus oxygen. Okay, so boiled tap water. Well, you have the water, but you have a lid on the top. You boil it to remove as much oxygen as possible. It's not A. Tap water, just normal tap water, because there's that's open to the air. Well, it has the water, and it has oxygen dissolved in the water, and it's open to the air, so it can get more water, more air. So the answer is likely to be B. But let's just double check the other. Pure oxygen gas, well, oxygen is necessary for rust, but it has a lid on it, so you're not going to get lots of water in. It's not C. Pure nitrogen gas with a lid on it doesn't have oxygen because it has a lid on it, and it's nitrogen, and there's no water. It's absolutely not D. That's going to be the least likely to rust out of all of them. Okay, good. Question 25. Other than hydrogen and oxygen, which substance provides only one of the essential elements for plant growth? And 1. Okay, so plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They also need ammonia and some other things, but remember, ammonia is a compound. It's not an element. Okay, it has nitrogen and it has hydrogen in it. So if we look at this, this has 1, 2 essential elements. This has 1, 2 essential elements. This has 1, 2 essential elements. And this is nitrogen in both of that. So those are the same essential element. So there's only 1. The answer here is D. Okay, fantastic. Question 26. Calcium carbonate is decomposed by heating in an industrial process. The equation for this reaction is shown. Calcium carbonate produces calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. So which statement is not correct? Keyword there, not. It's very, very easy to miss this one very important word. Okay, so if we look at this, the common name for calcium carbonate is limestone. Yes, that is correct. The common name for calcium oxide is lime. Yes, that is also correct. Calcium oxide is used to neutralize alkaline soil. That is not correct because calcium oxide itself is alkaline when it's dissolved in water. So you can't neutralize an alkaline with an alkaline. Okay, or alkali with an alkali. Okay, calcium oxide is used to neutralize industrial waste products. That is correct because industrial waste products are often acids. Okay, so acid plus alkali produces salt plus water, so yes. So the answer there is C. The answer that is not correct is calcium oxide is used to neutralize alkaline soil. Question 27. What are the products for the complete combustion of ethanol? Okay, complete combustion. Okay, which means we have ethanol plus oxygen produces carbon dioxide plus water. And it's always, for complete combustion, you always go to carbon dioxide. That uses up all the ethanol, and you don't get carbon monoxide. So the answers with carbon monoxide are wrong. Okay, that means that's incomplete combustion if you get carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide only? No, you need water as well. I know that seems silly. You burn something and you get water, but you do. It just evaporates. So the answer here is carbon dioxide and water only. And that, my friends, is the end of the chemistry section. So now Mike will take over and help you with the physics.
Question 28. The diagrams show two distance time graphs and two speed time graphs. Which graph represents the motion of an object that is accelerating? All right, let's have a look at that. So we're looking for an object that's accelerating. Now acceleration is change in speed over change in time, technically change in velocity over change in time. But when we're dealing with a speed time graph, we can pretty often use it interchangeably. Okay, so acceleration, we get change in speed divided by change in time. So what we're looking for is a situation where the speed is changing. And if we look at option C here, there we go, we can see that speed is changing as time changes. Speed is increasing. So there we are. Option C seems to be like the best one there. If we look at the other ones, A, we've got distance increasing at a constant rate, so that's a constant speed. And B, the object is stationary. It's not moving. The distance remains constant. Well, it could be moving in a circle, but we're looking for something that's specifically accelerating, that has to be accelerating. And B could definitely be stationary. D down the bottom is moving at a constant speed. C absolutely has to be accelerating. 29. The diagrams show 4 blocks with the same mass. Which block is made from the least dense material? Alright, first things first, let's use our equation for density. Density is mass divided by volume. Now, if we want to find the object with the smallest density, where the mass is the same, then we would want to look for the object with the biggest volume, and that should give us our answer. So let's start calculating our volume. Volume for A is 8 centimeters times 2 centimeters times 1 centimeter, that's 16 centimeters cubed. B, 3 centimeters times 2 centimeters times 3 centimeters, so we're dealing with 18 centimeters cubed. Let's look at C and D. C is 5 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, that's going to give us 20 centimeters cubed. And D, there we go, is 2 centimeters by 3 centimeters by 4 centimeters, that gives us 24 centimeters cubed. So the one with the biggest volume, and therefore the lowest density, is D. And the reason it's got the lowest density is because each block has the same mass. 30. The diagram shows the two forces acting on a rocket as it travels upwards. So we've got an upward force of 2500 newtons and a downward force of 1000 newtons. What is the size of the resultant force acting on the rocket? Okay, let's look at that. I've got 2500 in one direction. I have 1000 in the other direction. That is exactly the same as having 1500 going upwards. There we are. The resultant force is just 2500 newtons minus 1000 newtons, and it's in the direction of the largest force. So that gives us answer B. 31. The speed time graph represents the motion of a car. Between which time does a car have the most kinetic energy? So kinetic energy is 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. Alright, so what does that mean? Well, biggest velocity, biggest speed will give us the biggest kinetic energy. And if we look up at our graph, what we can see is that the speed is biggest at this point here. It's travelling at 20 meters per second, and that happens between 2 and 4 seconds. So there we go, between 2 and 4 seconds, that's option B. That's when the kinetic energy is the largest. 32. A man does a known amount of work when he climbs up a ladder. Which other quantity must be known in order to determine the power he produces? Ooh, so we're looking for power. Well, power is given by work done divided by time. So if we know the work done, then we need to know the time. We know that one, we need that one, we need the time. So the answer is C, the time taken. There we go. Question 33. A glass bottle containing warm air is sealed with a screw cap and then cooled in cold water. The contraction of the glass bottle can be ignored. What remains the same during the cooling? Alright, we get some options here. The air pressure inside the bottle, the energy of the air molecules in the bottle, the force on the cap made by the air molecules in the bottle, and the volume of the air in the bottle. There's a couple of issues here. So it's giving us information about the stuff inside the bottle. So what do we know? Well, it's getting colder. So we know that the air pressure inside the bottle is going down. So it's not staying the same. The energy of the air molecules in the bottle, well, they're also going down. As the temperature goes down, the average kinetic energy goes down. So the velocity of them goes down too. The force on the cap made by air molecules in the bottle. Well, if they've got less speed, less kinetic energy, there's going to be less force from them due to the collision. That all goes down. All three of those change. But option D, the volume of air in the bottle. This is what makes this question so tricky. Is because under normal circumstances, of course, the bottle would change shape. It would contract. Especially if you were dealing with a plastic bottle. But here you're not just dealing with a glass bottle, you're being told that the contraction can be ignored, which means it stays the same volume. That's what they're telling you in the question. And if it stays the same volume and gas fills up the total volume that it can, the volume of its container, then option D is the answer. The volume of the air in the bottle will remain the same. But a tricky question, that one. 34. Which change of state is condensation? Well, condensation is what you get on the grass in the morning, in your window, when you breathe on it. It's what happens when a gas becomes a liquid. There we are. 35. Light travelling in a glass block strikes the inside surface of the block at the critical angle. Ooh, that's our key point here, isn't it? At the critical angle. What is the size of the angle of refraction? Well, at the critical angle, it's 90 degrees. It's exactly 90 degrees. That's why the critical angle is so important. As you start getting above the critical angle, you get total internal reflection. But the critical angle represents that cut-off point where it suddenly goes along the surface of the block. So it's exactly 90 degrees. 36. Infrared, microwaves, visible light and X-rays are all electromagnetic waves. Which list puts these in order of wavelength with the greatest wavelength first? Alright, let's just put this down. What do we have? We have short, we've got Gavin executes unwelcome visitors in a mad rage. So this is short wavelength up here. Up here is long wavelength. And we want to find the biggest wavelength first. So we're looking in that direction there. And what do we have? Well, let's look at answer A. We start with infrared, then visible, X-rays, then microwaves. No. Okay, so that's wrong because microwaves are out of order. B, start with microwaves, then infrared. Oh, okay, so far so good. Then visible, yep. Then X-rays. Ooh, B looks good. Let's mark that in. C, we start with visible, then X-rays, then back to microwaves. Oh, we're off on a tangent there. And D, start with X-rays. Well, it's only one, and we go the wrong direction entirely, so no. So it has to be B. Microwaves, infrared, visible, then X-rays. 37. A bar magnet is brought near to a metal rod. The magnet is now turned around so the north pole is on the right. The magnet is again brought near to the metal rod. In both cases, the metal rod is attracted to the magnet. Alright, what could the other metal rod be? Let's look at our options. Another bar magnet? Nope, if we turn it around it would repel. Piece of aluminium, not magnetically attractive. A piece of copper, not magnetically attractive. A piece of iron, yeah. There we go. A piece of iron. That's our answer. Okay. 38. Which row correctly states whether the unit for EMF, mass and weight is the Newton? Okay, we get a bunch of no's and yeses. Alright. Electromagnetic force is measured in volts. Mass is measured in kilograms, and weight is measured in newtons. So if we look at our table, we would expect to see no, no, and yes. Weight is measured in newtons, mass is not measured in newtons, EMF is measured in volts, so it's not measured in newtons. So we expect no, no, yes, and that's option A. There we go. 39. The diagram shows 4 circuits. Which circuit contains 2 lamps connected in parallel with each other and contains an ammeter that measures the total current in the 2 lamps? Alright, you know what, let's just draw this to this side. So we're expecting 2 lamps in parallel. There we go, it's 1 lamp, there's 2 lamps. Like so. And an ammeter that measures the total current, so we'd want that after the lamps. Come back together, there we go, and some kind of power supply. Like so. So we want a circuit that looks a bit like that. And there we go, option A. Finally, question 40. Which statement about radioactive emissions is correct? Alpha particles are the least penetrating and are positively charged. Well, that's absolutely true. Beta particles are the least penetrating and are negatively charged. Well, they are negatively charged, but they're more penetrating than alpha particles. Beta particles are the most penetrating and are positively charged, not negatively charged, and gamma rays are the most penetrating. And D, gamma rays are the most penetrating and are negatively charged. They are the most penetrating, but they've got no charge. So the answer is A. There we go, good job. If you enjoyed that, you found that helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you've got any requests for any papers you'd like me to run through, just leave a note in the comment section below. And have a great day.